Hey guys, before we get into the video, Huion wanted me to share another tablet with you guys. It's a KAMVAS Pro 12, a small screen tablet. It has 4 programmable express keys and a touch bar which lets you adjust the size of your brush, zoom in and out, and scroll pages in your browser. The screen has laminated anti-glare glass, which is easier on the eyes and reduces the distance from pen to cursor. The pen is battery-free and has a soft grip, plus an additional 2 programmable buttons. It also has a tilt function, giving a more natural feel to drawing. The tablet has a 3-in-1 cable, so the HDMI, USB, and power cable are all on one cord. It also comes with a stand with adjustable height, a drawing glove, a screen cleaner, and a pen holder that contains the nib remover and 10 extra pen nibs. First, I'd like to say that everything feels high quality. Everything is sturdy and seems like they would last a while. The tablet is comfortable to work on, the pen is comfortable, and it was a breeze getting it set up. When I first used it, it felt perfect, and I finished the background of this piece with it. However, as I progressed with the tablet, a couple things stood out to me. First, the color from screen to screen was way off. I got to a point where it was good enough, but it's still not quite right. It can be worked around by having a preview of your drawing open up on your computer screen though, so you can see what the colors are really like if you can't get it right. Second, I'm also still struggling with pen calibration. The pen itself works perfectly, but I have to skew the calibration to get my cursor underneath my pen properly, and it still feels a little off. Like some of my lines don't quite line up when I mean them to. But I'm not going to say that I haven't had problems like this with my Cintiq. On there, I got the screen colors just close enough as well, and because of its size, it's a tablet you have to recalibrate almost every time you use it, because the slightest difference in angle can change a whole lot when drawing. The canvas is still perfectly usable, but it's just something I thought should be mentioned. I also had compatibility issues, mainly with cursor freezing, but after hearing about this, Huion wanted to know more about the issues so that they could fix them. The solutions were really simple and a result of the programs and settings, not the device itself. Although I do experience a small, weird lag when drawing only in Clip Studio and only with this tablet, and neither me nor Huion have a solid idea of what causes that. So my thoughts are this. I think it's a good screen tablet and would be great for portability if you move or travel a lot, but it isn't perfect. However, it's incredibly cheap for the kind of tablet it is, and the alternatives are much larger investments. If you're looking for somewhere to start with screen tablets or need something that can be taken on the go, I feel like I can comfortably recommend this tablet because it isn't so intimidating. You can still get a professional performance from this tablet, it just might take a little extra getting used to. I've drawn everything in this video using the KAMVAS Pro 12 as well. So without further ado, let's get to what you probably clicked this video for. I was looking through my art recently and came across the really old ones. Actually, I found a folder in a mess of folders I've been looking for, which contains the really juicy drawings when I was a solid 9 years old. It was way more nostalgic than I thought it would be, and I came across the pictures of myself and couldn't help but laugh a bit over them. Then I started thinking about how differently I portrayed myself in drawing through the years, and kinda wanted to redraw them. Then I thought it'd be fun to take you guys on that journey with me. From the top of my head, I picked out my most memorable designs, hunted them down, and sketched them out. So today I'll be drawing them out for you, paying some homage to the skills and styles I used at the time of making them, and give my 2 cents about them. So the first one I made when I was around 9 years old. I looked nothing like this. My hair wasn't that light, I was the palest person I knew, and I didn't dress or pose anything like this. But I made her when I was just starting digital art and first joined the DeviantArt community. I used spaces all the time, probably traced from anime, and I would trace myself, so I channeled that for the pose. If I hadn't, her arms would 100% be behind her back. During this time period I improved a lot and started to draw myself more accurately, and in general started to draw more without bases, but she was the only recurring design I had, and the one I still remembered, so she's who I decided to draw. I didn't know how to draw clothes, but I didn't want it to look like it was painted on, so young me decided to give her bell sleeves and a huge asymmetrical hem, which I also thought was really cool at the time. I went by Wolf Peace 99, which explains the peace signs. I always drew peace signs incorrectly, but I spared myself here and drew them properly, as I'm sure child me would have wanted. Occasionally her design would also feature little wolf ears and tail. They were darker times. Officially, I believe she did have green fingerless gloves, and I did mean to add them here, but I forgot to draw them as young me also frequently did. For pants, I just bucket fill the legs blue and draw big gray blocks for shoes, because I couldn't draw those either. Usually I just give them socks, so props to me for putting a little bit more effort into her. I did at least try to put some wrinkles into the pant ankle sometimes, and would draw ridiculously large gold buttons and zippers when they'd be visible. I also began to make a reasonable effort to render my art, so I chose to staple black shadows and white highlights with a heavy Gaussian blur. I've used it so much as I progressed with art. It's a phase I see a lot of beginning digital artists somehow share. I put about as much effort into drawing her as I would have back then, for the authentic experience. Eventually I was banned from DeviantArt for being 9 and joined Flipnote Haytena, where I discovered someone called Peace Wolf. Or something. I wasn't having that, so I changed my name to Minty Wolf, and the little green mint with wolf ears and tail was born. Sometimes I would personify my logo, but most of the time I drew this girl. The first time I drew her was for Flipnote to Avon Polka, which I thought was Levin Polka until I googled it for this, but it turns out it was a capital I, not a lowercase l this whole time. And I just wanted a simple, cute character. But from there I kept drawing her and featuring her in almost every Flipnote, even in instances where it was about myself. I never considered her to be me, but I let her be my image to 71 followers I managed to gather at the time. Seeing her design now makes me feel like she was created in the wrong generation. With rose-tipped hair, an oversized sweater, little shorts, and a cohesive and simple palette, I feel like she'd fit right in with many aesthetics and characters I see today. I was still drawing full stripes and patterns on many of my characters, but not her. I think she needs a little updating, of course, but her design doesn't seem out of place or outdated to me. I was still heavily influenced by anime at the time, leading to a trend of deep blushes with a small white highlight on everything. But I stopped using gauze and blur so much and started to use colored shadows. My shadows also started to make more physical sense, but they were the first baby steps and still left my drawings a little flat. Then I stopped using Flipnote so much and so stopped using her. When Haytena shut down, I lost almost all evidence that she ever even existed, because I had to delete the Flipnotes from my DS when I uploaded them. I lost almost everything I made, actually. I had a few still saved, but they were mostly works in progress. For whatever reason, Avon Polka was one of the Flipnotes I never deleted. So I was back on DeviantArt on my WolfPeace99 account, but still going by Minty Wolf. And then I created this atrocity as an intentional persona, and I really didn't want to draw her for this video. I hated her design so much. But I took the time to create a reference sheet for her back in the day, and officially named her Minty, so I had to. What's worse is that I can see everything in her that I thought was really cool when I was 13. She has short, white, spiky hair, a vest, white pants, a beauty mark. I drew her with her hands on her hips. It's so cool, because I finally figured out how to kinda do that. I was also dogged at the time for how I drew breasts, so I always drew perfect circles at this time, then I drew wrinkles around the outlines if that made that any more natural and realistic, which I tried to mimic here. I kinda learned how wrinkles work, so I used them excessively, and I overall knew how to draw clothes a little better, so I added too many layers and details. Still couldn't draw shoes at all. I look back at this time of my art style with regret and sympathy. I thought I peaked. I had a lot of growth in terms of anatomy and character design, and I was really having fun with my art, but I thought it was top tier. It wasn't. In some senses it was aesthetically pleasing, but I was trying way too hard to prove that I knew exactly what I was doing, even though I still had so much to learn. I also started not to do line arts. I would just keep sketching over one sketch with low opacity until I had darker lines, and then clean them up a little bit. My outlines were usually a gray color because of this. I would sometimes sketch in shadows and highlights as well, and then shade differently anyway. There's more scribbles and not the clean hatching you see here. I started picking highlights and shadows individually for colors for more of a painterly look to match the sketchy lines, which usually made a mess of things. Usually it looked like I reverted back to gray shadows again, and I felt that a lot of my art at this time was kinda muddy. Anatomically at least, I improved quite a bit. And then after never using a human design after slaving to make a reference sheet, Minty 2.0 was born. I decided to create an anthropomorphic character that better matched my logo and the name Minty Wolf. I thought, and still think, there's an appeal to anthro characters. They're fun to draw and look at, but even back then I understood that they were often sexualized, and I did not want that for this character at all. Minty was my first vehemently neutral, sexless, genderless character I made. Minty was also sort of what started my creation of circle-headed characters, because their head is bathed with a straight-up circle. The whole reason B came about was because I started basing a lot of my characters with circle heads, and I never got more detail from there in animations until, eventually, it became a character itself. Minty marked a turn for the better, even though they were created so soon after the last one. I began shading more naturally and returned to colored shadows, and started to try to ditch the overuse of bright white highlights. I started to develop my own style again and a cleanliness to my drawings, toning down my excessive details. I humbled myself again. I still think fondly of Minty. They're simple and clean character, and I never hated them or anything, I just grew out of them. As much as I do them back in the day, I don't think I ever actually posted a single thing with them in it. There's a lead and a couple of unfinished Flipnotes on my DS from when I started doing things on pseudo-memo. Other than them being based on my logo, though, there was never much more to them. Then, on pseudo-memo, I made the transition to just being called Minty. These next two designs kinda happened concurrently, but I wanted to draw this one first. For a while, I'd still been doodling myself as just myself, wearing whatever I was wearing that day and however I wore my hair. Although, usually I didn't draw glasses, because I wasn't really fond of drawing them. It wasn't until my Eyes Blue Flipnote that I did something more with the design of myself. I didn't actually really like to draw me, so I kept it simple and easy to draw, but also still true to how I looked. I became a lot more comfortable with my anatomy during this time, and I started doing legitimate studies, and so therefore I felt like there was much more appeal to my cartoony characters as they had better foundations to work off of. I remember really liking how I do the legs in Eyes Blue. I always loved coloring in with lines on this design. I felt like it added a cool depth and texture. It's something I'll probably steal for another character someday. I also minimized my shading to pretty much nothing a lot, and used it very, very sparingly. Until recently, this remained how I drew myself. I actually had a Flipnote in the works for a long time. It was a long one, and it featured this design, except I was wearing sweatpants and boots instead, because I still couldn't draw proper shoes. I still haven't actually completed it, and probably never will at this point, even after all the work I put into it. Maybe I'll post what I did finish someday. And then, you know who? B. B was an accident. I never intended for them to be a character or my mascot, but here we are now. Like I mentioned earlier, B started out as just a simple base design, and I used them to get back into animating because they were simple. Then I became known for them, and they made a natural transition to my persona, and I often use them to represent myself. So when I changed my name from Minty to B, which means something to me, they did the same. This is the only reason why B and I share a name. Once I started to give them the story, I separated them from myself, and I took a mascot role instead. I thought about changing the name again to avoid confusion, but B and Wasp works so well I couldn't bear to do it. Especially since they're still a huge part of my brand or whatever I should call it. If it makes things weird, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. At this point, I started focusing a lot on anatomy and better ways of shading, which resulted in me using multiple colors and shadows. I'd also started using very soft shadows around the edges to add some depth to forms, but I sat down to do that here for whatever reason. I didn't use harsh highlights much, except for in the eyes. I started using soft highlights or color gradients, if at all. I also started coloring my line art here and there, but in simple ways. Wasp isn't included here because when I really started to develop Wasp, I stopped seeing B as a representation of myself, and instead a representation of whoever you wanted them to be. You can thank Wasp for B having a story at all. If I never had a thought to create them, none of this would have happened, honestly. Then my style, both art-wise and in real life, changed very rapidly, pretty much over one summer. It felt natural to change my persona because of the changes in my life, and so this is how I decided to draw myself. It's just a low-detail, cartoony version of me. I still can't draw shoes. I got up to grab my shoe for reference so I could attempt to hide the fact that I still can't draw shoes. The shoes on the cursed Minty were a genuine effort on my part. I did shoe studies before and that was still the best I could do off the top of my head. This is what happens when you avoid drawing shoes in literally every drawing you do. I don't know what inspired me to draw pupils white, but I can't lie, I've been really into it since I did it to be. I started coloring my lines more vibrantly, but it depends on the piece. Sometimes I'll still leave the outline black on the outside, and sometimes the inner lines will just be one color instead of multiple. I draw myself in all this sporty looking stuff, but I'm really not sporty. I just think it's comfortable. A couple years ago I thought leggings were dumb, Adidas were overrated, and yellow was an ugly color, but look at me now. People really change. My style just keeps getting simpler and simpler. I'm very into neat, smooth lines with the same line weight. I like to do minimal shading, more for clarity and appeal than depth, still with multiple colors, and overlay with a gradient if it feels appropriate. For years I'd been filling in color by hand, but I rediscovered the ease of bucket fill and we're back at that. I'm also back to harsh highlights, but very minimally, only on shiny surfaces, hair, and eyes. It's been a long time since I've included my freckles in drawings of myself. I was kinda happy to do it again. Well, that's about it. I would still draw myself how I am amidst all these designs if I ever had the need or desire to, but looking back on how I presented the idea of myself, these guys stand out the most to me. I think it's interesting to see how I've changed based on how their designs changed, for better or for worse, and it was fun to look back on everything like this. So yeah, let me know if you guys enjoyed the video and if you'd like to see more things like this. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.